Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I am going to provide the answer of the weekly challenge which I have posted this week. In case you were able to successfully complete the challenge and you have shared me the answer, congratulations for adding something on your skill. In case you were not able to complete the solution and you are still looking for the answer, you are in the correct video. In this video, I am going to code this problem statement in a step-by-step manner. So, in case you are struggling, you can watch this video and you will get the solution for the problem statement. In case you are coming to the channel for the first time and you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel to get the next videos in this series. This was our problem statement TBMK0007 extract and organize disease alerts by state. We have explained the problem statement in the previous video, problem statement video. So in case you are not aware of the problem statement, I would request you to watch the problem statement. I have put the video link in the description. Okay, so let's quickly go through what exactly we are supposed to do. So we have this website which is called petdiseasealerts.org. You would find the link in the description, and it has different states of the United States of America. Okay, so if you see here, if I hover my mouse on this, you would see that these are all the different states, and if I click on any one of those, let's say this one, Washington, then it's open a new page where it says that active positive cases of Washington this month is this, right? So basically the objective here is to extract all of this information, including all the state names and what exactly is the status of the active positive cases in that state. We have to put it in an Excel sheet, right? So this was your objective and this was the problem statement which we had to address. Okay, so I am back into my UiPath Studio, and the first thing is we have to go to this website, this URL, and for each and every state we have to extract the information, right? But before extracting all the information for each and every state, it is important for us to get all the individual states, right? So I'll go to my UiPath Studio, I'll go here, I'll create a new sequence, and I'll create a sequence which I call get all states name, and I'll say create. So in this page, I am going to write automation to get all these states name from this page. Okay, so the first thing first would be, I'll go here and I'm going to use the modern design. So I'll use an activity called use application/browser, drag and drop it here, indicate the applications to automate, and I'll point it to this page, right? So this is from the UiPath modern design. In case you guys don't understand modern design, we have a dedicated playlist where we have explained the modern design activities, right? So please do refer that playlist. Okay, so once we have opened this web page, the next thing what we have to do is we have to extract all of these information, right? So in UiPath we have an activity which is called find children. Okay, so find children is an activity which is useful whenever you are working with the UI automation, user interface automation, and it will get you the hidden information, or it will give you the collection of the UI elements inside the specified scope. Okay, so I'll drag and drop this activity here which is called use browser. Now find children is asking me where actually is your information, right? So I'll just put it here like this. I'll minimize this, and I just have to indicate it on the screen, point it to this complete wizard, right? See here, I'm not pointing it to individual, I am pointing it to this complete map like this. Okay, so output of find children would be a list of UI elements. Okay, so please understand the output of the find children would be a list of UI elements. In case you guys are new to the find children and you don't understand how do you utilize it, I have this dedicated video where I'm explaining how to use find children in a step-by-step manner. Okay, so I'll explain here when I'm using it, but if you want to know more, you can watch the video as well. Okay, So we are going to use the find children to get the list of all the states here. Now let's go to the properties, and in here I'll say that the output of this, I'll create a new variable, hit Ctrl+K, and I'll call this as children's. Okay, so I am asking UiPath to get me all the list of this and store it in a variable which is called the children's, right? To further understand this, I'll drag and drop an activity which is called writeLine. Okay, I'll put a breakpoint here, and I would run this automation in a debug mode. Why I am doing so? Because I want to make sure and I want to see what exactly is coming inside the find children output, right? Do I need to change the scope, or is there anything which I require, what additional information I require, right? So all of that would be known when I run it in debug mode. Now the automation is paused. My children variable is this, and as you can see, if I click on that, it's showing me that Mukesh, you do not have anything in your UI element. It says that the UI element is 0, right? It is not showing me anything. So that means that I have not able to get this thing, right? So now what do I do next? I'll stop this. Back to my UiPath Studio, and we have just seen that it was not able to get any of the UI elements, right? Now if I go here on these 3 lines and I click on this button which is called Open in UI Explorer, right? So UI Explorer is an advanced tool of UiPath which allows you to manipulate the selectors and get the details, right? So as of now, this is the selector which UiPath has got when we pointed, and it is not having those 53 elements which we are interested in, right? Now this is a very powerful tool, guys. Visual tree, it has property explorer, it has selector editor. This is a very powerful tool, and in case you are a developer and you are not comfortable using it, I would request you to watch these videos that will give you a complete insights on how to use it, right? It has a lot of features, right? Let's see that in action. So I am interested in getting those elements, right? So as of now, if you see, there is this yellow button which is called the enable highlighting. So if I click on it, it is showing me on the web page that Mukesh, we are getting the elements from you from this yellow highlights, right? So in the UI Explorer on the right hand side, I can see that this is the complete HTML page, and this is the diagram which we have got. If I expand it here, it is not having anything, right? That's why when I am getting the find children, it is not giving me anything. However, I am interested in those list of states, but if I do, inside that there is something which is called G features. If I expand it, inside the G features you have something which is called G states, right? So this is how the developer might have structured. So inside the rectangle we have nothing, then you have something which is called G feature, and inside the G states, if I expand it, I can see that I have got the list of all the states, right? And this is what I am interested in. So if I ask you a question that, hey guys, what exactly should I get the find children for? Should I get the find children for this guy, or the states? The obvious answer would be that Mukesh, get the information for the states, right? That is where your information lies. So I'll go to these states, and now I can see that here we have all these elements available. But now in UiPath, how would you guide the find children activity to get this information? It's absolutely simple. Just right click on this and select set as the target element, which means that I am instructing UiPath that now instead of this web control rectangle, get the information from the states. So I say set as target element, right? And this is how you can manipulate the selectors inside the find children as well. Okay, so now this selector is updated. Let me quickly highlight. It's highlighted again, right? I'll leave this to the default settings. In case you find there is something extra, additional star or anything, you can manipulate the selector, but for me the title looks good, the web control ID state is, and tag is also great, right? So I'll highlight, toggle this, and I'll say save, right? So the only thing which I have done is I have manipulated the selector of the find children, and now the selector is updated to something like this. Now if I save this and I say debug the file, previously in the first run I was not able to get anything, but now if I run this, let's see what do I get. Okay, so the expectation is we want the list of all the UI elements, right? And now in the children's, which is the output of this, you can see that we are getting some close to 51 UI elements. Can expand it and you can see that you are getting a list of all the 51 UI elements, right? So this is your children, and if you can expand it here, you will see the complete list of all the elements, right? So what I would like to do is I will always copy it to clipboard so that I can analyze further that what information I require from this, right? But we are done with one step where we are getting all the information in this children variables, right? So what I'll do is I'll just copy this, expand this, copy to clipboard, right, and paste it in my Notepad++. Okay, Notepad++ gives a better visibility, so I prefer to use this, right? So this is what I have got from the find children when I run it in the debug mode, right? So I can go to the view here at the top, and let's see the language. Sorry, not here. In the language you have an option of XML, right? So now I would be able to identify and see what exactly are those 51 elements, right? So this is one UI element which is starting from here, and this is the second UI element, comma here, right, the third UI element. So like that we are having all these options, right? So we are one step closer where we have got all these details, right? And now in this all, if you notice here, we are interested in this guy, Arizona. See the second state name, which is Arkansas, California, right, and then Colorado. So all of this is information is coming inside that thing, right? And if you notice here, if I just take any one of the node, right, this is important for us to understand, right? The information which I am interested is in the selectors, right? So this is our selector where we have to get that information, right? So at least we are done with the one step. So I'll close this and I'll stop this, right? I hope you guys are following along with me and you have got till this part that how we are able to get the number of the state. If that is the case, just comment down states, right? So that I know that yes, you guys are following along. Okay. So we have got this complete list, right? Still incomplete, but at least I have got this thing, right? Now this children, if I go to the variable, you would notice this is an I enumerable of UI elements, which means that this is a collection. See, system.collection.generic, which means that it is a store. It is a collection of all the UI elements, first UI element, second UI element, third UI element. And I am interested to know something from that UI element, right? So basically I have a collection which is having all this information. Now I want to get something out of a collection. I have to loop this. So I am going to use something which is called loops, and I will simply use something which is called for each. Okay. Now you have multiple for each here. Which one should I choose? You can use the for each UI element. You can use this, any one of this, right? With the modern design activities, if I simply use the workflow control for each, drag and drop it here, and if I just pass the list of items, where are your list of items? So my list of items are in children's. That's it, right? And the current item will automatically get updated to the UI elements, right? If I go to the properties, you would notice that I do not have anything, right? It is iterating the UiPath.core.UI elements, right? And in this current item, what you will get the each and every UI element, right? So to better understand, I will change it to UI element, right? So for each UI element in one by one, we are getting it here, right? So what I'll do is this right line, I'll point it to here. I just drag and drop it inside so that I want to see what value we are getting in the UI element, right? The same automation, I just looped it, right? And let's now again run it in the debug mode, right? I am showing you this in a step-by-step manner because I want you guys to understand the logics, right? And then when you understand the logic, you can actually optimize it, put your own logic, put your own techniques, and you will be able to write a good automation, right? So we have got close to 51 elements. Out of those 51 elements, they are iterating in this UI element. And now if I go to the UI element, this is the data which I am getting in the UI element, right? I can click on this pencil button, copy to clipboard, and I'll take it again to the notepad. Now this is one UI element, right? The same thing we are going to get for the other 51, right? So this is one. If I rerun it, I'll get the second one, third one, fourth one, right? Now if you see this, from this UI element, what is the information I am interested in, right? So definitely I'm not interested in this big thing. I don't know what this is, so I'll just image base 64, I'll just remove this, right? So here I am interested in the name of the city, right? And the name of the city, if you notice that this is in a selector which is coming here, right? See, this is where I am interested in, that I want to get the name of the ID, web control ID of this selector, right? So this is the first one, right? If I hit cancel and I say continue, the next UI element would come, and this is my next UI element. I'll copy this to clipboard, paste it after this, right? So this is our second UI element, right? I'll just remove this big text so it is more readable, like this. Okay, so this is my second UI element, and inside the second UI element also, if you notice, we have something which is called selector. Inside the selector you have Alabama. Now in the same selector you have something which is called Alaska, right? So from each of these UI element, which is this first UI element, sorry, the first UI element, then the second UI element, you have to get the value of the selector, right? How do you do that? Let us see that now. So back to the automation, and I'll say stop this, right? And I have seen that for each of the UI element I am interested to get the selector. Okay, so inside this for each, where I have put this breakpoint, I'll take an assign activity. Okay, and let's try to get the selector out of the UI element, right? So it is easier for us, right? You can write a single expression to do all of this, but I want to do it in a step-by-step manner, right? So I am interested to get the selector. So I'll go here, I'll hit Ctrl+K and I say selector, right? Now where is the selector? The selector is inside the UI element which we are iterating. So I'd say that UI element dot selector. See, like this, UI element dot selector. Okay, and UI element dot selector is going to give you the output in a form of a selector, right? How do I know? It's all mentioned here. If I just put UI element dot selector, you would notice that when I keep my mouse on the selector, it says that as selector, which means that the output is going to be a selector. I say save, and now you would get an error. It would say that Mukesh, the selector which you have created, this variable, it is of type string, and this is giving you a selector, right? So let's make it string. I'll again open this. I'll open this, and here I would mention dot toString, and that would make sure that this is getting me the selectors, right? So now what would happen? Each and every time the automation will work, it will get to each and every element, and it will only give me this information. That's it, right? It won't give me any other information, right? And now in here, if I rerun this automation, in the selector variable we should only get the selectors, right? So I'll again save this, debug the file again, right? Now we started with getting all the 51 elements, the UI elements, then the selectors, right? So now let's see what do we get. I'll clean this, and in my automation it's running in the debug mode. Finished. Let's go to the locals, and in the selector now I am only getting this information. Copy to clipboard, first element. Okay, I'll hit OK, continue, locals, and this is the second selector, right? Copy to clipboard, take it back like this, right? So now we are getting all these elements one by one, right? Now from this element we are interested to get the value this. Now there are multiple ways to get this value, right? You can use something which is called get attribute, right? There is an activity called get attribute. But the other way which I want to tell you guys is the string manipulation, right? This is a string, first string, second string. If I ask you guys that what do you want to get this information, you can use string manipulation also, right? And with the latest updates in UiPath, you can use the built-in activities for writing the string manipulation. Let me show you, right? So I hope till this part we are clear, right? That we have got all the 51 elements. From all the 51 elements, we extracted the selector, we put it in a variable, and now when this loop is working, this for each loop, in this selector value, I would be getting all the selectors one by one, like this: first, second, third, fourth, like this, right? Now to extract the text from this complete string, you can utilize your 𝐔𝐞𝐞, regex, anything you can do, right? But with the new updates in UiPath, you have got activities which are directly available for you to extract this information, right? We have already covered the updates of UiPath in the complete playlist, right? So as an RPA developer, it is important for you guys to be stay updated to the product, right? Because if you don't know the activities, you would again go to internet, write the code, and again do something, right? All of that you can do, but you have a direct activity available in UiPath which is called, I guess, extract text, right? This one, see, in the install formatting extract text, we have an activity which is built in available, right? You can use 𝐔𝐞𝐞, regex, all of that is still applicable, but we have a direct activity, right? And I want to utilize it, already covered in our update playlist, right? So you can refer those. Now what is the text you want to extract? Where is your source text, right? So my source text is in the selector, which is coming here. And the best part of these activities is that you can test it without running. So this I'm just testing now, right? Okay, so where is my source text? This is my source text, right? What do you want to extract? I want to extract the value between the two strings, where it is the starting and what is the ending. Let's go here. The starting would be, let's say, this web control ID, right? Copy. Starting text is this. Put it in double quotes because this is a string. And what is the ending text, right? The ending text is, let's say, this. Or maybe you can select the complete one, right? But maybe I'll just select this single dot, and this is my ending text. And you can see that in the preview I am able to see that yes, it is giving me Alabama, right? If I just pass the second selector, copy, pass it to the source text. Okay, I think I put the double quotes, the second value, and it's giving me Alaska, right? Very good activity, latest updates in UiPath, right? So we have tested, it's working fine. So all we have to do is now this source text would be now the selector. Now you won't be able to get the preview because the selector would get when the program is running. So that's why I have hard coded the value just to validate, right? So now when you are running this extract text, in the output you are going to get the first extracted text or all the extracted text, right? We have already explained this activity also, so not going into details. So where do you want to store this? So I want to store this in an activity which is called state name, and this is the state name we are interested in, right? So this is, till this point we have got the state name, right? Now what do we want to do? We want to get this state name in a list, right? In a complete list. We want to extract all of that, right? We want to put it into an Excel, right? So what I'll do is, at the starting of the automation, I will go here and I will use an activity which is called assign. Okay, and here I would create a new list, right? So I will create a new list. How do you create a new list? You can just use a variable. I'll call this as list of states, right? And in the variables here, I'll call this that this is nothing but, I'll go here, browse for types, and I want to create a list, right? It can be an array, but I prefer to use a list. So I'll select list of T, and this will show something like this. Select this one, system.collection.generic list of T. What is your data type? My data type is string, so list of string, right? list of string is created, and here you have to initialize it, otherwise you are going to get a null reference exception. You can initialize it here as well, but I prefer to do it here so that everybody knows that yes, there is a new list which is being initialized. Okay, so how do you initialize a list? It's absolutely simple. You just write here new, then you write here list. Okay, and it is showing you the syntax. In the bracket you have to write of and just write string, new list of string, and save this, right? So now what I have done is I have created a new list of strings. I have initialized it so that the object reference not set to an instance of an object is not coming, right? So list is created. Now all you have to do is, once you get the list from extract the text, keep adding to that list. So I'll go here and I say add to collection. It is a collection, so that's why add to collection, drag and drop it here. Let's go to the properties, and it's asking me, Mukesh, where is your collection? So my collection is the list of states. And next you have to tell what is the type. It is of string. And what is the item? What do you want to add, right? So I want to add the str state name. From where this is coming? Whatever you extract from the extract text, str state name should be added to this collection, right? And that way what would happen when this complete automation is running, here you would have the complete list of states, right? So let me go here and I would use a write line activity, right? And let me put a breakpoint here, right? And also a good practice, whenever we are running this automation, right, this is working in loops, right? I want to make sure that it is working properly, and we should know, right? So I need to put the logs. So I'll just use an activity called log message, drag and drop it here, and I'll say that this is an info level log, and I'll just mention what is getting added to the list, right? So I'll say added to the list plus str state name, right? So that way this log would be available whenever we are running it from the orchestrator. Okay, so this log would be available. This is done, right? And here this would be added. Okay, so once we are reaching here, we can check it in the debug mode. Also you can also write log just to see the total count, right, whatever you are getting. So I'll again say info level log, and I can mention that total count. What is the total count? Would be whatever you have in the list. So list of states dot count dot to string. Okay, and that should print that count as well. Okay, I have put a breakpoint here so that I can see what exactly is happening. I'll save this, go here, and I'll say debug the file. If everything works as expected, right, what should happen? The robot should loop through each and every element, UI element, extract the selector, from the selector extract the state and add it to the list, and the final list whatever we are having should have all these elements, right? So if I go to the output, you can see that added to the list Alabama, Alaska, all of these are getting added. Total count is equal to 51, right? Since it is running in the debug mode, I can see the list of states here. I can click on this pencil icon and you can see that all the list of 51 elements are added to my list, right? So the same we can also validate from the output, right? So this is the benefit of adding logs, and when you run it from orchestrator, there also you would see the same level of logs. Okay, since I mentioned about orchestrator logs, in case you guys are new to orchestrator and you want to understand more, I have this dedicated course which is a paid course available on orchestrator, where I am covering all of these syllabus, and as of now we are also offering some good discounts. If interested, you can watch this course as well. The link of the course is available in the description. Okay, so that was about the orchestrator course. Moving ahead, so till this point we have got all these list of elements, right? And I hope you guys are following along with me. If that is the case, just comment down list of states, right? So you have got the list of states. I would say just comment down list of states so that I understand that yes, we all are on the same page, right? So I'll go here, I'll stop this, right? Once we have got the list of all the states in one collection, we have to iterate through those, and then we have to click on all of this one by one, right? So this completes our get all states name workflow. There are few things which are remaining. The first one is the thing that how we can utilize it in the actual automation, right? So if you see here, the output from this XAML would be a list of states, which means that all the states whichever we are going to get here will be the input for the next XAML, right? So what I'm going to do is I'll go to the arguments and I will create an output argument. I'll call this as out list of states, right? The direction would be out now, right? And this would be the input for the next XAML, right? So at the end, once we have got the total list of states, I'll take an assign activity and I'll simply assign that variable, which is our out list of states, and assign it the value whatever we have in the list of states variable, like this. Okay, so that way we would have this. Right now it is showing an error because I think I have not updated the data type. So let me quickly go to the arguments. Here it's string, it should not be string, it should be the, I'll browse for type, it should be the list of string, right? So I'll write here list angular bracket t, and here it is list of strings, and I'll say okay. Save this. Okay, the other thing which is remaining here is the logs, which we have already put. You can put more of the logs here as per your requirement, right? The other thing what I would like to do is encapsulate this thing with a try catch block, right? So that will make sure that yes, this is done with the exception handling. I'll put it as the system exception, and I'll just use something which is called log message activity. Okay, I'll put it as error, and I'll just log here an exception where I say exception in getting the states, and I'll just mention exception dot toString. Okay, in case you guys do not understand what is exception handling, how to handle that business system exception, we have a dedicated playlist where we are explaining exception handling both in English as well as Hindi language in a step-by-step demonstration, right? You would find all the links of the exception handling also in the description. So this is done now. Okay, so we have got all the list of states one by one. Now if I go back here, what I need to do, for each and every state we need to go and extract the information. I need to click here, right? But I cannot create a separate click entity for all of these. I should have a generic logic. So how do I get a generic logic? So for that we need to first create a new XAML. So I'll go here, I'll create a new sequence, right? And that's where we are going to specify a common logic, right? So this one I would go and say extract information, right? This would be the place where we are going to write a logic which would be a generic logic to extract the information, right? Now, so how do the robot will know that whether I have to click here, click here, click here, or click here, right? What should be the selector? Should I make it generic? What it should be, right? So for that you have to use something which is called UI Explorer, right? So I can click on this, which is UI Explorer, right? Very powerful tool, gives you a lot of features which you can utilize whenever you are doing the UI automation. Okay, so I'll simply go and I point it to this one which says indicate element, and I'll point it to any one of the state, right? Let's say the first one. Okay, it's analyzing the selector, and you can see that this is the selector which UiPath will get when it is trying to load the element, right? And if you would see, it has not given me the name of the state. Whereas in the selected item, I can see that there is something which is called name and there is something which is called the parent ID. Okay, so I'll just copy this and I'll paste it in a notepad file. for our analysis, right? So this is the actual selector which we have got, right? But here, as I can see, there are two additional things. One is the parent ID and one is the name, which both are having Washington, right? But here the W is capital, here the W is small, right? Which one should I use, right? So that is one thing which we need to see, but as of now I have added both of them, right? So I'll copy this, I'll take it back and I'll paste it here, right? Let's do one more thing. I'll say indicate on element and I'll point it to any other state. Let's say this one. And I'll again do the same for Nevada, right? I'll copy this and I'll pass the selector in the notepad, right? Why I'm pasting? Because I want to analyze, right? I know that some of the states are having two strings such as North Dakota, South Dakota. Now the question arises, how this UI Explorer is rendering the selectors, right? So let's quickly validate that as well. I'll say indicate element and point it to any one of the state where it is having two strings in the name, such as this one. So now this is my third selector. Copy paste it and paste it here, right? Now you can see that this is first, this is second, this is third. I can clearly see that ID is changing every time, right? So ID cannot be used in the selector because it is dynamic, so I'll put it as star, right? So I have removed the ID because this was changing, this was changing. Now if you see here, the name is something which I have got from my list of states, right? But now here we have name and here we have parent ID. And when the states were having two string, the name is having South space Dakota, S capital D capital, whereas the parent ID is having South hyphen Dakota, right? Now a question arises, should I use the name, should I use both, or should I use any one of them, right? So the answer lies what exactly you have in your list of states. What exactly you have in your list of states, right? So how do you know that what you have in the list of states? So I'll go back to my previous XAML, which is get list of states, right? And here I think we were printing it, right? Yeah, we are using it in the logs message and individual item. If I'm printing, let's me quickly see that for each yeah, added to the list, right? So I'll quickly go here and I'll say run the file, because I want to see what exactly is the state name which is coming, which we are trying to add to the list. If it is South space Dakota like this, I will prefer name. If it is like this, which is parent ID, I'll prefer to use this, right? If it is none of them, then we have to do some string manipulation, make it in the same format and then add, right? Go to the output, and as you can see, everything is in small, and whenever there are name, it is separated by a hyphen, right? So if I scroll down, you can see here South Dakota, South California, right? South Dakota S small hyphen and this guy. So that means that my final selector should have this one and it should not have the name. I'll remove the name. Sorry, this is what I was creating, right? So I will remove the name. The only thing which would be remaining is the parent ID, right? So this becomes my final selector. I'll go back to my UI Explorer. I'll do the same changes here. I see that yes, ID is something which is changing, so I'll put a star here. In the name, I do not require the name, so I'll omit the name from here like this. Now this becomes my selector. I can quickly validate, highlight, it's pointing, right? Let me just quickly change this to some other state. Let's say Oregon. Here the web ID is still 46, so I'll make it to star. Validate. This is how you create a dynamic selector, right? Otherwise it would always break. So validate, and now I do not see the highlight button. I think we need to just copy this, right? I will again open it and then I'll test it, right? So sometime it does not work, so you can again close the UI Explorer, reopen it and then test it, right? But the idea is whichever state name I put here, it should be able to give me that state name, right? Okay, I think there is something which is happening wrong here, right? It's not able to get, right? So I'll again go and indicate on element and let's point it to the state again, right? Because it's not working, right? So this is the selector, so I'll remove the ID, I'll include the parent ID, which is Washington. Let me click on validate, highlight, Yes, this works perfectly, right? So this becomes my selector. But if I change the state name, Oregon, I can validate, and now, okay, again I'll go back here, highlight, and now it's validating to Oregon, right? So let's check for someone else, which is Kansas. So I'll go here, I'll put Kansas, validate, okay, and see, it's pointing to South Dakota, but I think the validate highlight needs to be again done. Yeah, and now it's pointing to Kansas, right? So this means that this is my final selector, which I can use if I have to click on the element. Okay, so this is how you create a dynamic selector. The only thing which we have to do is we have to replace this parent ID with the name whatever we have got in the list. So I'll copy this and I'll paste it in my notepad, right? And I can close this UI Explorer, right? So this is my selector which I'm going to use to click on the element. Okay, so I have got the selector. Going back to my UiPath Studio, I'll go to extract information. Here again I'll use the same thing, which is the use application / browser. I'll indicate it to the application, which is this guy, right? And now inside this, what we have to do is we have to click on the element, right? So to click on the element, I'll use something which is this guy, which is the click activity. Drag and drop it here, right? And I simply point it to any one of the element, right? So I'll just point it to any one of the element, let's say the first one. And what would happen? The modern design experience will automatically create some selectors for you. But if you can see here, it has created the fuzzy selector, which has this ID, which has this name. It is taking the image automation, which is not correct, right? So I do not want if every time to search is by this image. So you just toggle this off. Fuzzy selector I also do not want. You can make it to star or anything. However, what I want is the strict selector. It says that Mukesh, you should have at least one method, right? So I know that it should be the strict selector, and I can go back to my notepad, take the selector, and I'll simply paste it in the strict selector like this, right? So I'll remove the fuzzy, and this is the top level which is already there in the app application browser, so I don't need this. The only thing we require is this guy, right? And that is our strict selector. You can keep the fuzzy selector on and you can make it star, but I'll prefer not to use it, right? Because my target is already being identified here, right? So I'll remove the fuzzy as well, and this is my final selector. How do I know? Because we have just utilized this in the selectors, right? And now all we have to do is replace this with the parent ID. So I'll say confirm, right? So click activity is going to click on the state. So I'll change this name to click on the state. So this is done, right? Now all we have to do is we have to change this thing from the list of states. But where is the list of state? I do not have the list of state, right? So I'll go to the arguments, and that list will be an input argument here, int underscore list of states. That would be an input argument which would be in the string, and this would be my list of states, right? Because the output of that becomes a input for this XAML, right? Now to iterate, I'll again go here, take a for each activity. Okay, where is your list of items? My list of items is in this one, which is the in list of states, right? Inside the body, what I'll do is I'll just drag and drop this guy here. So this use application / browser is now inside the for each, because that's what we have to do for each and every state which in that list, right? And where is the state name now? That would be in the current item, right? I'll take one more activity here, assign, okay, and I'll create a new variable here, state name, str underscore state name, control plus K, str underscore state name, because I do not want to change the current item, right? You can change the state name here also, that will also work, but I prefer it to do like this because we want to add it to the Excel also, right? So it would be better if we have a separate variable. So str underscore state name will have now the state name whichever it is iterating one by one, right? First state, second state, third state, one by one will come here. Now inside that, what we have to do is we have to click on this state, but the state name is here. Now if I simply go to the properties, in the properties you would have the selector where you have to edit it, right? So in the strict selector you have this selector, this one is the selector, right? I'll just expand it like this. Now this is the point where you have to introduce the variable, and to introduce a variable in the selector you just have to right click on it, use the variable, and the variable is str state name, because this is what we are getting when we are looping it again and again into the for each. And I just say confirm, and I'll say okay, and that way we have made this click activity dynamic to work on each and every state which we are getting from the list, right? So what would happen once we go here and we click on this one? So robot will go and it will click on this first state, right, like this. Now we have to extract this information. Now after we click, we have to extract the information. To extract, we have something, we have an activity which is called get text, right? We'll indicate what exactly we want to extract. So I'll just go here and I'll point it to this one. Okay, I can see that it is again getting this one, but every time it would be not the same text, so fuzzy does not work for me. I'll go for the strict selector and I'll remove the fuzzy, right? I'll just say validate, and I can see that this is the text which I am always want, right? You can always use this alert as an anchor, right? But again, that is entirely dependent on you. For me, I'm only interested in this highlighted text, so that works for me. I have removed the fuzzy because it was showing this text which might not be true, right? So I just say confirm. Okay, so once you have got the text, I'll use a new activity. I'll hit Ctrl+K and I'll say that this is nothing but your output, right? This is the output. Once we have got the output, the next thing is we have to write this same thing to an Excel, right? And whenever we say that we have to write the data to an Excel, I require a data table, right? So to write the data to an Excel, what I'll do is at the starting of the workflow, right, where before even the for each, I'll go here and I'll use an activity called build data table, right? Because I want to build a data table, and that data table I want to utilize it to write this data, right? So in the build data table, I can go here, which is the data table. What data you require? So we only have two things. The first thing is the state name, right, which is a string, and the other one I would call it as status, which would again be a string. Okay, so these are the two columns which I want. I hit OK. Build data table is a simple activity which will create the data table for you, absolutely blank. Now here, what is the data table? Hit Ctrl+K and dt underscore data. So this becomes your data table now. Okay, so once you have the data table, make sure that you initialize the data table so that you don't get null reference exception. How do you initialize? Go to the variables and in default, just write new system dot data table, right? Now many of you are thinking that Mukesh, this is where I struggle, right? I do not know what to write in this one, new system dot data table, right? How do you know this syntax? I know this syntax because I have already searched this in the UiPath forum. I have already encountered the issue. I have already faced the null reference exception. That is why this comes from my experience, right? But when I was also starting like you, when I was also building the automation, I was not sure how do you initialize, why I am getting the null reference exception, right? So what I would have done is I would have gone to UiPath forum, I would have gone to internet and searched that why I am getting this null reference exception, and I found out that whenever you create any of this dictionary kind of variables, complex data types, you always initialize it, right? So that's why I know that how do you initialize, and since I'm used to it, that's why I know it, right? So the answer to your question is practice, right? So don't get burdened that hey, I Mukesh know this and I do not know. It is because I might have a little more experience than you have. Okay, so I've initialized this new system.data table, and that would make sure that when we are using this data table, it will not throw a null reference exception. Okay, so blank data table is created. Now once we are inside this, we are looping all this, we have got the text. All we have to do is just add the data back to the data table, right? So to add the data, we have an activity again which is called add data row. How do I know? Because I have utilized it previously, right? So in the data table, I'll just mention dt_data, and here I'll open it. What do you want to the data table? So I want to add the state name, and I also want to add whatever we have in the output. So this is how you can also pass an array row to a data table. State name and the output will be added to the first row, right? So this guy will make sure that yes, this is added, right? I want to make sure that I am getting proper log messages, so I'll use a activity called log message here. Drag and drop it here. I will say that this is an info level log, and I will say that added to the data table, and I'll just mention the state name, right? Good practice, because when you are running it in an unattended mode from orchestrator, you would get this log directly, right? Okay, so what would happen here? It will go and it will just log the message, right? Now all we have to do is data table is created, we have added it to the data row, it's added to the data table, we have put the log. But now if you go here, our robot is in this screen, right? When the for each will execute, what will happen? After the log message is executed, it will again go back to the top here in the for each, and it will get the next state, and then it will come here and say that hey, I want to click on the state. But if you see here, the click state screen is not here. That means that I need to go back, right? I need to go back to the previous screen. Now you have two activities here. You have always an activity which is called go back, which is navigate browser. You can use it and you can just select go back from this option. Otherwise you have one more option. Sometimes this was not working when I was doing this previously. That's why I found out that we can always use an activity which is called go to URL, and I will just navigate it to go back to the previous URL, which was, I think, yeah, this is the URL, right? So I'll go here and I'll say that go to this URL, right? One thing, if you notice here, the actual URL has hash and a backslash, right? But I'm not using that because sometimes from my experience, what I have seen that if I put that hash in the URL, the browser is not able to navigate back to the actual page, right? So that's why I always try to omit the hash, but that only when this URL is able to navigate, right? So I can see that if I just use this URL, right? I'll show you guys as well, right? I'm using this URL, right? I have not put the hash, and if I say enter, it is still navigating to the same place, right? So that's work for me. Okay, just an additional tip. So this way what we are doing is we are going to the page, we are getting here additional information, logging, go to the URL, right? Everything is done. So now we have to add this information to the data table. Whatever information you have in the data table, you want to write it back to the Excel. So should I go and write it inside the for each? The answer is no. We want to write it once the complete automation is done. So I'll go here in the right, hit a plus. I'll go to the activities and I'll search something which is called right range workbook. Drag and drop it here. Where is the workbook? So I would say that my workbook is something this data_final.xlsx. The sheet name would be the, let's say, the wet data, anything, right? And where is the data table now? DT data, right? So that's it, right? So this should make sure that this will write the data back to the Excel, right? Now there is one exception which I want to handle here, right? Whenever this is going to work for all the states one by one, chances are there what might happen that It's worked for Washington, it worked for Oregon, it worked for California, Nevada, but while it was working for Arizona, let's say, it got into some exception. Now do you want to completely stop the automation or you want to continue, right? I personally want to continue it, right? So what I'll do is inside the for each, this body, right, this complete body, this state, this use browser, I'll put it in a try catch, and that will make sure that in case any exception is coming, the exception would be handled. It will log a message. I will say this is as an error. Okay, I will say this, I got exception in the state, and I'll just put the exception here, exception dot toString. I want the complete exception details, right? This depends again on your implementation, but I would like to have the complete exception details, right? So now what would happen, this try catch would make sure that in case one of the state is breaking, it would not impact the other pieces of automation. Okay, and this completes this. I have written the logs, right? Now all we have to do is just merge both of them and run it end to end. Now to merge both of them, I'll go to the project and I'll open my main.xaml. Okay, in the main.xaml we have to simply merge both of them, right? So I'll go here to the project. The first thing which we want to do is get all the state names, and after that we have to extract all the informations. Okay, so get all the states, I'll click on import arguments. It is giving me a list of states, so I'll create a new variable called str_list of states, right? And whatever we have got output from this becomes an input here. So I click on import arguments and this becomes my list of states, and save this. Now what should happen, this will go and this will work, execute this, get all the list of states, that it will go here and get all the information, right? Now in the extract information, whenever we are extracting the information here, right? So in the try catch, in here, I just remember one thing, right? When we click on the state and when we are extracting, there might be some time a little bit delay, right? So once we click on the state, I simply want to put some delay after it. I'll put 2. Do not put 2000 because we are in the modern design, and the timestamp here, if I hover my mouse, it is in already in seconds. So if I put 2000, that will become 2000 seconds, right? Classic versus the modern design experiences, right? If you are new, watch the modern design complete playlist, right? So here I would put 2. That means that I want to, after I click on the click activity, I want to have a small delay of 2 seconds. Okay, I'll save this, go back to the main, and this is on the screens, and that's it. I want to run it in the debug mode, right? So I'll go here and I'll just say debug. Okay, because I want to see how the automation is behaving. If it is working for at least 2 or 3 transactions, then we can run it completely end to end. Okay, so we'll keep an eye on the logs. As we can see, the logs are getting updated, right? The total count is now 51. Okay, okay, so added to the data table is Alabama, right? Let me go back to the screen and let's see what's happening, right? As you can see that it has opened the next state, which is Alaska. Going back to the previous screen, opening the next one, which is Arizona, right? And all of this we can see happening in the real time into my logs here as well, right? So added to the data table, this is what is getting updated to the data table as well, right? So let me quickly go here. I will break the execution, right? And this is where it has stopped, and I quickly want to see what data we have in the data table, right? So this is dt_data, and this is the data which is going to be added to the data table, right? So as you can see, Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, all of this is getting added. This is working perfectly. I can click on continue, and this will be continued for all the states which are in the list, which are all the 51 states, right? So this is working. I can see the logs, everything is working. So I'll go here and I'll stop this workflow. So this is completed. Right now there are few things which I want you guys to do. The first thing is, if you notice here, every time my browser is open, you have to make sure that you are using an automation here to make sure that the environment is clean. I have hard coded a lot of information, including the URLs, the delay, the URLs here, right? You have to make this thing configurable, because whenever we are writing a real-time automation, we have to make sure that the things are made configurable, right? So the things has to be made configurable, and the best way to achieve that is to use this automation in a robotics enterprise framework. You can also build this in a dispatcher and a performer model, where the get all states is nothing but your dispatcher. You get all this data, add it to a queue, that becomes your dispatcher. This data, which is extract information, this becomes your performer. You get all the data one by one from the queue, and then you perform it, right? So as of now, I am passing the data from here to here with the help of list of string. So this is nothing but your transaction item, right? In case you guys are new to RE framework, I have detailed videos explaining RE framework in a step-by-step manner, and as an RPA developer, it is important for us to know the RE frameworks, right? So please try to build this automation on RE framework. That will give you more confidence on building such use cases. Okay, so that was the step-by-step solution of the problem statement. Now next, I am going to show you some of the solutions which were the part of the submissions, right? And which are a bit different approach. So let's see that. So this is the one of the problem statement, or sorry, one of the solution, where you can see first we start by building the data table, then we use the use browser, and then we are using something which is called extract the structured data. Extract the structured data is typically used to get the data whenever it is in a form structure, when rows and columns, right? But this solution is using extract the structured data to get the count of the states. The robot will go to the website, extract the data, and the automation will get a state count which is 51. Please note, this is not getting the name of the state, it is just getting the state count which is 51, right? Now how do you utilize this 51? Now this 51 is running in a loop till the time the state counter is less than 51. That means for each and every state you have to go and get the data. Now in the website, all of this data is available in a counter number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you will see the selector for this guy, web control ID is equal to counter, right? So first time the counter will be 1, and you will get the first country name. Similarly, you go to the next, you get the second, you get the next country, you will get the second country, third country, fourth country, fifth country. So once you have the country name, all you have to do is just click on that specific country, right? And then get the text, right? So the idea is simple. Instead of getting all the state name, this got the count, and from the count they are using this activity called get attribute to get the name of the state, right? And other automation is exactly the same, right? You get the counter, you increment the counter. Now here, to go back, I was using go to URL. Here we are using send hotkey, which is Ctrl+R, going back, and then this is running on loop and adding the same time to the data table and writing back it to the Excel, right? So different way of approaching the problem statement, right? The second solution which I wanted to show you guys is built on the concepts of RE framework in a linear kind of a process, right? So all the things whatever we require are kept in a config file. We are using the framework read config file to read the data from the Excel, cleaning the environment with the help of kill all process, getting the URL from this config file, opening the application with the help of open application XAML, building the blank data table, and then this is the XAML which is to get the state names.xaml, right? If you notice here, pretty interesting, pretty good, neat and clean automation written in a step-by-step manner, right? If I go here and I say open the workflow, here the same thing, the same logic which I was using, find children, get the list of all the state for each of the states. Now here we are directly using the get attribute the same way I was using the string manipulation activity. Here we have used something which is called get attribute, directly getting the name, and you will get the state name. Once you have the state, inside it is running in a loop, so extract the list by passing that state name as an input, right? So if you see here, the state name is getting passed, and output you are getting that alert message, right? So inside that, the input, whichever the state name is coming, you are going here, clicking on the state, get the information and get it back, right? So that's how you actually structure your automation, right? So if you notice here, this is a very good piece of automation which is written: proper exception handling, try catch. It is written in a modular approach, and it's very easy to maintain and expand as well, right? So this is also one automation which I wanted to share with you. Okay, so these were the two solutions which I wanted to share with guys for this weekly challenge. I hope this was insightful and you guys were able to follow along with me and get the answer to this week challenge, right? In case if you have any more questions, any more doubts, feel free to write me in the email, or you can also drop me and comment as well, right? I'll appreciate your feedback on this weekly challenge series. And just a request guys, feel free to share this series to your friends, to your colleagues, and please do comment your feedback on the videos, right? So that YouTube amplifies this to a wider audience. Okay, so that is all for this video. I would like to wrap this video here. I hope this was insightful. If you have any more questions, any more doubts, feel free to write me in the comments, or you can also drop me an email as well. I would appreciate your feedback on the video, and tell me in the comments what would be the next topic or next video you want to see. So with that, I would wrap this video here. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please do subscribe to the channel, and happy automation.